Hello and welcome Inside Government. I'm Cedric Peterson. In this edition of the program, we feature the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, who, as part of its I Am King program, is organizing a male empowerment panel discussion entitled Man to Man, Straight Talk, a no-holds-barred conversation for Saturday, January 28th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Phillipsburg Cultural Center. Inside Government spoke to Project Officer within the Division Education Innovations Department, Ms. Sharon Kanagita, and President of the Gifted Foundation, Mr. Lenworth Wilson, to get a more in-depth look at the I Am King initiative and examine closely the objective of such a program within our society. It's good to have you guys here. We have a program coming up that is quite interesting. I wanted to bring this information from Inside Government out to the people of St. Martin because this aspect of your trilogy event, as you've titled it,
yes,
will involve the general public. But before we get to the public discussion that's going to be coming up on January 28th, which is next week, Saturday, let's get a little bit of history on the program. First of all, it's called I Am King.
Yes.
What is the program about?
Well, what is it about? I Am King is an initiative that came off from a previous program called Boys to Kings that started in 2014. However, in 2015, when the Department of Youth Affairs decided to do a male empowerment initiative, we sat together, Gifted Foundation and Youth Affairs, and we came up with I Am King. The idea behind it is, one, getting men in our community, young men and old men, to say, I am king, to declare I am king. And then secondly, having the understanding of what it means to be king. We grew up with the sentiments of boys will be boys. And so we have grown men still behaving like boys, still throwing on the throwback, sagging their pants and putting on a snapback. And the mentality doesn't change. You might change the toys that you have, but we're still being boys and lacking the responsibility and the moral development that you expect from men. And then we transition from that to a misconception of manhood. And so we believe that it's just a matter of having the right body parts, being the right age, and that makes you a man. And then the further miseducation of how much women you have or how much cars you have, the possessions, and that makes you a man, or how aggressive you could be. So we wanted to take the concept beyond just being a man and to becoming a king, which teaches the concept of taking care of your community, looking out for others, raising a standard then for others to aspire towards. Because when we think of kings or royalty, we think of a high standard, a regal appearance. And so having every man, young or old, consider themselves that way. Because we always say, we want a queen, and we treat women like queen, but then having our men thinking like kings was always absent. And I think that's where a lot of breakdown came in our society. So I Am King is targeting those mindsets of what it really means to be the epitome of manhood then.
See it bringing things into balance.
Yes.
If you look at it carefully, because there's been such a spike in the women's movement.
Oh yeah,
and I'm sure Sharon can agree and relate to that.
Yeah, because we don't have something called masculinism.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have feminism,
right,
and that's a movement. But masculinism, I think we probably need something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Sharon, let's look at it from your perspective as working within government, within this specific department of education and innovations. Looking at this program. How do you see government's involvement and this partnership with the foundation in order to make this happen?
I think it was a positive move on the side of Youth Affairs, the Department of Youth Affairs, to actually collaborate with Gifted. What I understood from the department head, Ms. Edmina Powell-Richardson, is that the kingdom actually is focusing on the young men. And coming out of that, this entire project was birthed. So I look at it working in the department or the Ministry of Education, as a matter of fact, dealing with the various schools. And my experience over the years of working within the ministry the need for the attention to boys or the male figure was actually missing. And there's no words to express how I feel dealing with this project. It had its hiccups, but I am just happy that it's moving forward and we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. The things that come out of this project, it leaves you wondering, are we living in the same world with the youth today? What happened? What happened between the years when I grew up with the young boys to now? What caused the drastic change? And I think coming out of the youth forum that we just had on December 8th to the public forum that we are going to hold on January 28th, I can't wait to hear the expressions.
Okay.
I can't wait to hear I wouldn't call it the battle, which we did say that it would be the battle of the fittest, the old versus the new. But I'm looking forward to this.
Let's back up just for 1 second and go back, as I said, and as you mentioned, a three-part or trilogy event. And it started first and foremost with the Youth Forum that took place in 2015.
It was a conference.
It was a conference.
Conference in 2015.
Okay. And what was the findings there? Let's get into that a little bit. What was it that?
Well, we had for the conference. It took place conference style. So we had guest speakers that spoke on different topics of meaningful relationships, of also just taking on responsibility of manhood and fatherhood. But then the main speaker, he addressed the topic of fighting, saying it not physical fight, but that as men we pursue what is meaningful to us and for our society. So we have to fight for what is right, fight for our families, fight for truth, fight to defend what is right. And don't just roll over, play dead, and do what society expects or doesn't expect of you. Just leave it on the side, but fight for it. And coming out of that, we heard more from the speakers than from the audience, from the young men themselves. We got feedback forms, and at most what they asked for is more. And they wanted more, but we also wanted more from them. Their interaction came more in the form of questions rather than answers, and we needed to get answers from them. So that's why this year, if the 2016-2017 version of I Am King, in this trilogy format, is hearing from the youngsters first. So when we had the youth forum, age 16 to 24, that was done on December 8th, we heard explicitly from the youngsters, from that target group. And coming over to this public discussion now, we'll say old school, new school. We'll take the new school concerns, as well as they will be present on that night. But then there's the old school version now for the older men who will be there to say, hey, back in my days, this is what happened. And this is the ideal that we think, and this is what we want to be striving for. This is what manhood should look like. And then you'll hear from the new school saying, listen, you probably say that, but you didn't show us that. That's not what we're learning from you. That's not what we're seeing, and that's not what we get to emulate from you. So I think it'll be a very interesting conversation, especially because of what took place at the Youth Forum.
The age group of 15 or 16 to 24.
Yeah.
What has been learned about this specific group within our community since we've ventured with having this particular event?
Speaking of it from a female's perspective, I'm quite happy that we have Linworth, because then you hear it from a man's perspective. But from a female/mother's perspective, I thought I was in another world. But then it's reality. The things that you heard, such as we have no examples there are no examples for us as young men. We are self-taught. They're actually saying that they bring themselves, like we would say, pull yourself from your bootstrap. That's what they're saying that they're doing. The music that they listen to
Heavy.
actually is a heavy influence on their lives. They listen to the music, and because there's nobody there to tell them, this is right, this is wrong, this is the direction you need to go, and the gang or the group that they are affiliated with looks at it from that perspective, that this is the guideline that you need to follow, they then put into practice exactly what the songs say. And we as adults, I didn't realize that every sentence in a song has a meaning. I didn't realize that different phrases and different songs sends different messages. So we had, during the Youth Forum, it was a learning experience for me as well, decoding music. What is it that the music is actually telling you? And I mean, Lenworth is better at that, decoding the music, and then showing them, when you invest in the music industry, what exactly are you investing in? Who exactly are you emulating? There was a lot of discussion as the young men trying their best to be something different to what they are seeing in society. One young man said, I've been working from the age of 12 because I see how hard my mom has it. And at the age of 16, I think he was, when he 16, yeah. He said, and now I own my own home. And he said, I've been saving money just in case I got a girl pregnant. So at the age of 16, I think you need to be thinking about, where do I go from here? What is my major that I want to major in school? Not that I need to work from 12, build a house, put my parents in, and save money in case I get a girl pregnant. That's the wrong priorities. But, those were the sentiments that you were hearing. That's just one of the God knows how many we heard that day. Yeah. Okay? And then you have the influence of the young man that feels, the girls want me. I'm the star of the show. And if you don't act a certain way, the girls don't look at you. It was just eye-opening. I mean, there's so much that was taken in that day that we need another program just to even go through it.
Lenworth, is it bizarre that we see this playing out in what I would say is in our part of the world, a Caribbean region, small community to medium size demographics, and considering our culture and heritage.
Yeah, I would say it's not absolutely bizarre, because we've caught ourselves buying more culture than we sell. And I growing up as a Caribbean man, I'm from Jamaica, and I remember days in Ocherias, seeing the tourists come in and telling them about the banyan tree and giving them the history and just what is essentially Ocherias, what is essentially Jamaican and the culture. And right throughout the Caribbean now, I think we've come to a point where we while we still sell our culture, we buy more of the incoming culture, especially North American culture. When it comes to music, rap is bigger among our teens than soca. Trap music especially has a bigger influence than reggae. Reggae is relegated, and from that youth forum discussion, is relegated to a Sunday afternoon just to relax.
Yep.
But when you want to turn up on a Friday night, Saturday night, it's trap. When you're throughout the week, it's trap music. And so, and then what we realize more and more once we get that, the cultures of drug abuse. Because now, I mean, we're at a point where when we talk about drugs, they're not even considering weed. Weed is not drugs. Weed is just some recreational activity.
drug.
It's not drugs. But then we have the Molly, the ecstasy in schools. We have kids using lean, using codeine and cough syrup and making all kind of mixes just to get a high. And so the drug culture becomes our culture because we've adopted it through the cultures that we've bought rather than, embracing the culture that we're supposed to be selling. And so it's not absolutely bizarre. But I could tell you some of the discoveries that we have from dealing with this target group is, as I mentioned, the drug culture, the music, the violence culture. And I'm in a unique position because besides through Gifted and working in youth-related activities, I'm also with the Ministry of Justice as the education coordinator for the Miss Lale Center, the Youth Rehabilitation and Detention Center. And so engaging that specific demographic, it's hardly anything that is surprising now. It's sad that now more the positive surprise you. When you hear ambition, when you hear somebody thinking different, when you hear somebody being positive about life and goals, it surprises you. When you hear a young person speak intelligently and express their views on an issue rationally, when you see a young person taking interest in politics and social development, it surprises you. And so it is for us then to find a way to make that become the norm, so that when we walk into our schools, we don't see kids showing up to school high because we've let a drug culture become the norm. We don't see kids walking, and I live in the Ebenezer area, and so I see kids showing up to school high in the morning. I see kids walking out after school, walking out from bars with a cigarette in their hand in their school uniform. And so it's what we accept or what we allow to be the norm. And I think right now, that generation, that target, that 16 to 24 group, and even younger are starting to write their own narrative, and it's one that we don't necessarily like, but there's no way to combat it until we engage them in a conversation.
Sharon, what are we looking at as government to actually try to find some working solutions for the short, medium, and long term to try to get some of the issues that Lenworth just mentioned fixed on our island? What is the conversation like in the ministry at this point?
Right now, we are busy. That's the purpose for this particular event. We are going to have the public discussion. From the public discussion, we are taking the notes from the youth forum and the public discussion. And the third leg of the trilogy is actually a stakeholders meeting. The stakeholders, we will then meet, and we would actually take all the reports that we got from all three events, which is the conference, the in-between community activities that Lenworth did with reference to the project, and also the youth forum, the public discussion that is going to be held on Saturday evening. And the stakeholders then will come up. Well, this is what we are hoping that will happen. The discussion with the stakeholders would happen, and from there, we would be able to create policies that would be able to assist the youth, assist the situations that we are now seeing in the schools. I think a lot of information is not readily available right now because it is an eye-opener, as I said, to all of us. Okay, it is really an eye-opener. And I'm not sure that even the stakeholders that deal with the youth understands the mindset of the youth nowadays. So that needs to be brought over. And that's the reason why we are having, I think it's 2 days, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's 2 days that we are meeting with the stakeholders so that we can actually sit and have this trashed out and come to a conclusion as to the way forward.
Okay. January 28th, it's taking place at the Cultural Center, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yes.
The format of that night for the public discussion, so people could What's it going to be like?
We'll be having a panel discussion. Like we said, old school versus new school.
Yeah.
That is the idea. It is not necessarily competition. It is more discussion.
Yeah. Hear
You
me
know,
out.
the seasoned guys, I wouldn't call them the old guys, the fathers, the grandfathers, the uncles,
And what age are we talking about there?
anything over 30.
Okay.
Anything over 30. Because you're having the youngsters, which is between the age of 16 to 24. You know, and I would think that they would bridge the gap between the 24 and 30.
Right.
And they have their mindset. They have their modus operandi, as you would call it. Now, we need to find out, why are they operating the way they are operating? And why isn't the behavior of the 30 to 50, 60-year-olds resonating with them? Why isn't the example, or maybe there isn't an example? Maybe there is an example. I don't know. That's what we need to find out. Or is it that you are thinking that the way you are living is actually an example for the young boys? I don't know. They need to tell us what they are seeing from the older generation. Mm-hmm. And I think that perspective is more important than the other way around. Because the other way around have already been there. Mm-hmm. We are trying to get the target group to see life through different eyes, differently than how you're seeing it right now. And in order for you to do that, we all have an idol. We all have an example. And maybe you might not have it in school. Maybe you might not have it home. But there should be somebody in the community that you should be able to look up to and say, I would like to walk in that footstep. Mm-hmm. And it has to be a positive footstep. So we are hoping from this discussion that somebody's life would be touched. Some young man would see, well, it isn't all bad, as what we got from the Youth Forum. Yeah. You know, that there is somebody that I could look up to.
But also, I think it's important that from this discussion, the older generation, the more seasoned, also see the need.
Generation X and baby boomers.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
Generation
exactly.
X and baby
Find
boomers.
some politically correct names,
Yeah.
titles. All right, so that they'll see the need to form meaningful relationships with that next generation, because unfortunately, there's not a lot of teenage boys who have good relationships with their fathers, or if they have a relationship at all. When I say good relationship, I mean in a healthy relationship where there's communication, where there's positive influence, where they're looking at a good role model and aspiring to be that role model, or at least a semblance of it with their own twist to it. That's missing. Uncles, if the father is gone, the uncle is gone too. So the
village mentality is not there.
It's not there. And for our young men now, they will idolize those who are there on the block, those who are there whipping through the neighborhood with a flashy car, regardless of the means. Those who are there on the TV screen or on YouTube that they're watching. Those who are there on stage, they will look at those and that will be their example. So hopefully from this public forum, one of the things that would come out of it is that seasoned generation would take a more active role in influencing, or actually recognize how they influence. I've spoken to fathers who haven't realized that being a married man, driving in a car with my son and calling to every woman out the window is teaching my son to disrespect his mother, and whenever he gets a wife, to disrespect his wife, because it's just such a casual thing. It's without even thinking that, hey, my son is in the backseat watching me. He's learning from as little as age 2. Mm-hmm. He's learning when I talk to his mother a certain way, when I talk about his mother a certain way, whether we're together or not. Those influences, coming over on the next generation, that my son or my daughter is learning how I'm treating, how a man should treat a woman, or learning how I manage my finances. I get paid and I'm by the whorehouse or by the bar or by the casino, and I'm teaching my son, I'm teaching my daughter what is acceptable from a man. Those things we need to consider more. We need more men to be conscious and aware of what we're passing on, and that's what came out from the youth forum when they talk about what they're learning and what the examples or lack of examples that they see. They say, you keep saying you expect better from us, but how? Why is it that you're expecting better when you haven't shown us better?
But they said it.
Yeah.
One of them literally said, "You didn't teach us. So how can you expect better from us?
Yeah. And it might
We
seem
are doing what you told us to do, which is nothing. We are doing our own thing. So if you taught me the correct way, then you could come and you could correct me. But you didn't teach me. So I taught myself, and this is what I taught myself." He said, when I get into my own music, and he said when he's down and the trap music starts to play, he said, I get the spirit. And I mean, he's acting it out. And he said, I get in the spirit.
the vibe.
And he said, it just tells me what to do.
Turn up.
And I do it. So sometimes when they go out and they commit these criminal acts and they do all of these different things, there's more behind it than just committing an act. They do. I mean, he used the female version of it where he said he listened to the music and the music told him you got to put her on the bed. Broke it down. And he said he went and he looked for the girl and he put her on the bed and he literally tried to break the bed because that's what he was told to do. And, we might look at it that, he needs to have better sense. But this is what these children are having as examples. This is what, back in the day, they used to say the TV is raising the child. It's no longer the TV that is raising the child. It's social media, music, everything that you can say makes an impression on the child's mind. That's what's raising the child today.
That brings us to the end of this edition of Inside Government. If you would like more information on the I Am King trilogy of events, please feel free to contact the project manager, Janelle Presentacion, at 542-3904 or email at janelle.presentacion@stmartingov.org. For video on demand of this and all Department of Communication programming, be sure to visit the official government website, stmartingov.org. I'm Cedric Peterson. On behalf of the government of St. Martin and all of us here at the Department of Communication, thanks for watching.